welcome to Growing Your Mindset with Adam Diaz and Justin Hoke. We are so excited to have you here for this Thursday edition of Growing Your Mindset, your time in the gym. It is Throwback Thursday, and we're going to be talking today about church. What are we talking about, Adam?
We're going to take it to Churchill. Yeah. So good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning, Justin. Good morning, Jason, Brian, everyone that's popping in and joining us this morning. As everyone's piling in, we are on Thursday, Throwback Thursday. We're visiting a blast from our past to see what kind of mindset lessons that we can learn from all these wonderful historical figures that have shaped the world that we live in today. And today we are talking about one of those were actually very, very crucial in shaping how we live today, because I think things would have been different if the Allied power, the Allied forces did not win the war in World War II. And so we are talking about Winston Churchill today.
What does World War II have to do with Ghostbusters? I thought we were talking about Winston today. Winston Churchill. I get it. Yeah.
Winston Churchill. Yeah. So we're going to be winning with Winston Churchill today. And man, this guy is one of those iconic figures. I don't think there's many that we can look back in history that have nearly single-handedly shaped a lot of what we are enjoying and we benefit from today. And not in a sense of some of these individuals, like, the inventors and the creators, like the Wright brothers, who, we have so much technology from them these days that stem from that. But this individual rose in a very dark time in history where there was a lot of turmoil. And so when he came onto the scene, there was all this political unrest. There was all kinds of things happening. There was a recovery of the First World War. The United States and the world were facing a Great Depression. And so there was a huge economical factors going on. And then we have this rise in the Axis forces, the Axis ones, that the Nazi regime and these other forces that were trying to invade and take over Europe.
Yeah, no, pretty tumultuous time in the history of the world. And, just like today, right? Or just like any other wartime, we're very reluctant to get into either war as a nation. So, but from the perspective of England, obviously that's where we're going to be this morning. Is Churchill's not, the United States involvement in World War II is sort of moot at this point. We're talking about somebody who's right there in Europe, and they were in danger, right, of being conquered by Germany. I mean, we weren't even facing that. I mean, it would have been quite an ordeal for America. A lot of people don't necessarily know this, but I mean, the very first attack on American soil in our history is Pearl Harbor, and then the second is 9/11. So, I mean, we don't have a ton of experience with attacks on our soil.
And when we're looking at, this is kind of far removed for us. And even for them at the time, the Americans didn't come onto the scene of the war until later on into the war. But we have here, Britain was essentially the world power, especially in the European side of things. And we have these countries that are falling from France and Belgium and Poland. All of these countries are being taken over and invaded by Nazi Germany. And there is all of this political unrest, turmoil, and uncertainty that was abounding. And actually, the prime minister in England at the time was forced to resign because he was not making the best wartime decisions. And so when Neville Chamberlain resigned, it was more or less a unanimous decision to bring in Churchill. And rightfully so, because this individual here had been, I guess, groomed for this kind of work. He was born into a well-off family, and he went to all the the Ivy League schools, so to speak, and he went into military training from a very early age. And so he had a ton of experience, and that was prepared him for what was to come. But I don't think anything can prepare you for like this sort of, this sort of circumstance here.
Well, and rising to the occasion to lead a nation during a time of unrest like that is, it's an interesting situation. And I mean, as several of you who watch the show know, Adam and I come from Christian backgrounds, and so in the life of of the church, this sort of thing has happened several times.
Sure, sure. And when we have this sort of, a lot of times when we talk about war and we talk about these kind of, things, especially in these days, there's it's gonna be debatable whether we should even be involved in the war in the first place. But this
Sure.
here was, I guess, one of the most recent clear distinctions of like a good versus evil kind of thing that you can come up with. I know, everybody has their own opinions of these things, but I'm of the opinion that where this this Nazi party was coming from, and this regime was from a place of wickedness and evil. And the most of the world saw this, even though they were trying to avoid war. Even though then we had so many of the other countries in this area did not take Hitler seriously, and they were trying to appease him, and he just kept getting increasingly aggressive until he started invading these countries. And this was one of the main reasons why Churchill was elected, and he was the one that they wanted to represent and lead the country, because Parliament saw him as always standing against Hitler. He was outspoken from the very beginning that this was not good. All the things that were happening, history is repeating itself. Like, we need to make sure we take stands and procedures now.
Yeah, yeah, and from my understanding, during that whole time period, I mean, you're exactly right. Hitler was sort of seen as just he was obviously Germany's involvement in World War One. Hitler is involved in that war as well,
Mhm.
and so they knew who he was. Obviously, the whole Jesse Owens ordeal has taken place. For those who don't know, that was an American Olympic runner who was a black male. He amazing athlete. I think he won like. I think it was 4 or 5 Olympic gold medals. I mean, I should know that part of our history a little bit better because it's a tremendous point of our history. But and he won those medals in Germany because that's where they had hosted the Olympics, and the running there um, um, uh, was a unique situation because of the position that they had, where they, part of Nazi belief is the belief in a superior and lesser races, and apparently they didn't follow the Human Genome Project. But uh, anyway,
Yeah, and so we have this, all of this crazy stuff going on, and we look back, and it is really, this is what the movies are made out of, literally. And when we have Winston coming onto the scene here, there's so many life lessons, so many mindset lessons that we can get from him. And in preparation for this, other than my research that I was doing, I actually wanted to watch the movie The Darkest Hour with Gary Oldman that came out a couple years back. Phenomenal movie, by the way. It was about his first month, I guess, in office, and this was a real trying time. And I believe it was fairly historically accurate as far as like how they depicted him coming into office and all the pressure he was under, and the scenes there really showed the gravity of the situation. And it wasn't just, oh, there was war and this was, there was this threat of invasion, but there was it was divided, right? They were divided. They were thinking that if we just appease Hitler, half of them at least, if we just appease him, he'll leave us alone. He sees that we're, equal or whatever. And so there was this huge argument on the other side. And Winston never never backed down. And I think the first lesson that we can learn from Winston Churchill is that you stand firm in what you believe in. And he does this. We see it in history, and he says the empires of the future are the empires of the mind. And And I think that this is where his war began, long before the actual physical war started. That he saw this was coming, and he was determining, committing in his mind that I'm going to stand in what I believe in no matter what.
Yeah, no, to be able to reach down deep inside and say, "Look, I'm not going to give up no matter what takes place." That's important. I mean, obviously, we need that in business. We need that in life. We need that with the various things we're facing. It's interesting because I've honestly that part's not been a problem for me. What's been the problem for me in my life is the knowing when to keep things to myself. Because standing up for what you believe can some personalities that's easier than others. Others, we've got terms like doormat or pushover or milk toast. You know, to describe someone who is the absence of that characteristic. So, but so there can be extremes. Churchill, from my understanding, he wasn't quiet about the things that he believed, but he also he wasn't on that other spectrum as well.
Yeah.
He was willing to die for the things that he believed in. Yet he wasn't. Um, it, it wasn't like Hitler, where Hitler's the opposite extreme, right? You've got this guy who's saying, "Okay, I believe in this. Everybody else needs to believe in this,"
Yeah.
or or else.
A lot of times we'll get pressure, we'll feel pressure, and it can come from, varying ranges, right? I remember when all the COVID stuff was happening, there's all these social pressures to wear a mask, to not wear a mask, to go out, to not, there's all these things going on, right? And it just reminds me of, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And it's so important for us to make sure that we understand those things that are important, the things that we have high, that we keep in high value. And one of those things for Churchill was freedom. For us, obviously we enjoy our freedom. We live in the freest country, and we are so blessed to be here. But what are those other things that that we really believe in? Is it your family? Is it, are you going to make sure that you stand up for your family, even if it means you have to stand up to yourself and say, hey, you're not doing the right thing. You need to, you're working for your family, but then you're neglecting them or something, right? So we need to make sure that whatever those things are in our lives that we hold in high esteem, that we are actually standing firm for those things.
Yeah, no, no, I love the way that you put that too, because one of the things that you learn very early on in an entrepreneurial journey is that if money or the accumulation of wealth is the only motivation, it's going to be pretty short lived.
Yeah.
It's definitely it's definitely a motivation, and you have to have a right thinking about money. It's you've got to go from that shift that we go through, where we see money as I don't know. For me, it was I saw money as something evil rather than just being
Yeah.
greed.
You saw
The
the results that it.
greed being the evil behind money, not money itself being evil. And then seeing, and then the shift comes after reading the Go Giver book and realize, okay, you know what? Wait a minute. This is a resource. This is a tool like any other resource or tool, and I need more of it, not so that I can lavish it upon my own lusts, but so that I can be a greater impact for good in the world around me. And then that sort of helps form my why. Now, my why is it's got to start with family on some level, I would think, but then also to branch out from there to how can I help make this world a better place? How can I leave a lasting legacy? And that's one of the things that I really enjoy about whenever Elon Musk is sharing some of the reasons for the things that he's doing, this desire to make um, living life on Earth better for future generations is, whatever you think of the man, his motivation for doing the things he's doing and creating the innovations that he's creating is definitely inspirational.
For sure, for sure. And when we are looking at like those bigger purposes, like how we can make an impact, a lot of times it's hard, especially in peacetime, like now. It's because we have so many options. Churchill didn't really have an option, right? it was either fight or die in a very real sense. And so I think we can learn a lot from that, because when we start getting real clear and removing all those options, removing all those decisions, all those things, and say, this is what we want, this is where we're going to go, then we're able to lean in it in a similar way that Winston Churchill was able to lean into this position and own it. Because if he was halfway in and if he was halfway out, if he was doubting, it could have gone a very different way.
Well, let's just take leadership for example. There, if he's doubting, if he's waffling, if he doesn't have a clear vision, who's going to follow him?
That's right.
And the fact is um, you were telling a story before we jumped on that was inspirational. I hope I'm not stealing your thunder by stealing your story, but of why don't you tell it? Where Churchill takes
Okay.
and
Yes. Yes.
mobilizes. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is a really good one. And the lesson we learn from this is side window thinking, or back or alleyway thinking. And what I mean by that is, Ben Hardy talks about this, and he says, a lot of people that you can think of two ways to solve a problem. You go in through the front door, you go in through the back door, and but then you have those other people who have, they're going to try to get it done anyway. They're going to find the window in the alleyway. They're going to go up the fire escape ladder, and it's what he calls pathways thinking, right? We try to figure out, how can I do something instead of I can't do it. And so there was this instance, and there was a place in France called Dunkirk, and this was like the last stand. All of the eggs were in this basket for the British troops. There was like 380,000 troops stranded here, and the Nazis were closing in on them. Their army was stretched to its limits. The navy, they didn't really have very good support. And so what happened was that Churchill was able to rally these other leaders to orchestrate this massive movement of civilian ships to go across the English Channel and rescue the men. And there, like I said, there was over 380,000 men who were eventually rescued from Dunkirk, because Churchill wasn't going to say, they're done for. He wasn't going to say, well, we've done all we can. He said, there's got to be a way we can rescue our men and bring them home.
Yeah, which we in recent American history we've seen sad the sad opposite, um, where we didn't lift a finger and we watched. We had time, we could have mobilized something, and we watched U.S. citizens perish in an all-out attack that in Benghazi. And it's something that we shouldn't forget that took place in
Yeah.
our lifetime. But one of the things that I thought was really interesting there was the leadership that this man displays. I mean, not just the clever thinking, not just the okay, I'm going to, because he can't just say, okay, I'm going to think outside of the box and come up with a different solution, when he's going, okay, I know that I don't have these resources. I need to accomplish this goal. How do I get it done? He can't just command a bunch of civilians to go. He's got to lead them. He's got to inspire them. He's got to do something that makes them say, okay, I'm going to change the normal course of my day, and I'm going to be patriotic. I'm going to follow this man into a situation that could potentially end up in the loss of my livelihood, my
Yeah.
boat, my life.
Right. Yeah.
Um, and and so to be able to command that sort of allegiance, yes, it may have helped that there might have been a patriotic wave during that time, but I'm sure that only comes when you're following a clear
Yeah.
leader. I mean, I could tell you right now,
Yeah.
the guy who's tripping over himself right now in our White House, I'm not going to go and risk my life for something that he says. I don't see any clear reason for the decisions he makes. Now,
Yeah.
he became clear and started having a clear vision and was a clear leader, that might be different, but it's not the way it is.
Certainly. And, when we look at leaders like this, we know that Churchill didn't do any of this himself. And there's this very interesting scene in the movie, and I verified that this was correct in there. But he says in the movie while he's driving, he's looking at a bus, and he says, "I've never ridden a bus before," and he starts talking about how he had never done these things where basically he lived a very very aristocratic pampered life. Right, he had this very affluent lifestyle, and he didn't experience a lot of things from the normal perspective. However, the way that he was able to connect and resonate with the people regardless, that he was able to inspire and motivate these captains and these generals and these leaders to mobilize over 800 civilian ships, which was unheard of in history at this time, to have this kind of fleet of civilian ships coming in at wartime to rescue the troops.
Well, unheard of in England, but I know where they learned it. There was this little war called the Revolutionary War where their opponent only had civilian ships. So, well, not technically true actually, but
I guess if there was no navy, that was the navy, right?
right. There's you got to do what you got to do, but
For sure, for sure. And like with this vein of that, you got to do what you got to do. This is the mentality that Churchill had. He was known for his wonderful speeches, his inspiring, impactful, and memorable speeches. And he was, I guess, if you would typify it with use one word to describe him, it would be victory. This was a word he used often and very deliberate and intentional. He would say, "Never give up. We're never going to give in, no matter the cost. We're going to fight."
oh, I love Galaxy Quest time. Never give up, never surrender. Yeah, no. How many times have we heard similar statements, right? And
Yeah,
I think um, they're taking from that attitude that he had. We're not going to give up. We're not going to quit, whatever it takes. And as someone of Jewish heritage, that it's super important to me. It's kind of like if you ever talk to someone from South Korea, not North Korea, but someone who's over here from South Korea, one of the things that you will often hear is how much admiration and respect they have for General Douglas MacArthur. And so as someone from Jewish descent, I have a lot of admiration for Churchill, although Adam knows that I forget who he is. You mix him up with another English counterpart from a couple of hundred years before, but that's beside the point. This is a guy who the efforts that he made helped to in that war in which these atrocities were taking place, and without that war coming to an end, who knows, all the
yeah,
human experimentation, all of the human suffering that was taking place by the Nazi regime. Who knows how long it would have continued.
yeah, yeah. And I think when we have this kind of attitude, there is no way back, that there is only victory, that we have to win. And, to kind of tie this into, the gap and the gain and these kind of things, that, when we, no matter if we lose, we still win if we are framing these things in the right way, that if we are always looking to, this has to be a victory. Like, I have to win. Like, there is no losing in the cards. And when we think this way, it also allows that pathways thinking, right? It also allows that. So how can we win, instead of, there is no way for us to win. There, and when we shut our brains down from thinking by saying there's no way, and that's not what Winston did. Winston was saying, we're never going to give up. We're always going to move forward, and he was able to rally the entire country and the entire Allied forces behind him because of this attitude he had from the very beginning.
Yeah, one that reminds me of the story of the famous Spanish general first whose first order when his soldiers hit land was to burn the ships behind them,
Yeah,
so that they, why? So that there's no going back, there's no turning around, there's no retreat. Retreat is not an option.
yeah. And for myself and my wife, I think that's why we've been able to have such a strong relationship, marriage relationship, because we came into this, saying that this was going to be it, that we were going to make this work no matter what. And there was never like getting, splitting was never an option, kind of thing. And you approach it that way, it changes things. And here, when we look at this idea of victory, right? This idea of this defeat is not an option. He says, and I love this quote: "Victory is not won in miles, but in inches. Win a little now, hold your ground, and later win a little more."
Oh, I
And
love
and
that.
I love this because this really typifies this idea of 1% better every day. That we're in for the long. This is a marathon, not a sprint. This idea that we need to just keep pushing forward, and the victory is in those small wins.
Oh, 100%. I mean, and what do we call it? We call that stacking, win
Yeah,
stacking. I mean, it's the
wins.
same thing that we talk about every day in, here on, uh, as in our time in the gym. Uh, the path up the hill is exactly that.
Yeah,
Wonderful, uh, small victories,
yeah,
and then stacking enough of those together to have a massive victory. Yeah, I mean, I think, and I believe that after a while, stacking smaller victories, bigger victories start coming that you're able to stack as well. But
yeah,
um, to be able to get that encouragement to go forward, we've got to be willing to celebrate the um, being in the gap by recognizing the gains, right?
yeah. Yeah, for sure. And when we're looking at, all of the things that Winston Churchill stands for, and I think one of the things that he says, and that I want to quote him here in a moment, but who knows if we are in this life at this moment for whatever the specific thing is that is about to happen. And he has a speech where he talks about, this could be your finest hour, and what are we going to do with it? And I think one of the lessons that we can learn from Churchill is being prepared for your finest hour. Churchill was ready when the time came, and he rose to the occasion, and he proved himself that he was ready. And who knows, we may not have a world war on our hands, but there's always war, there's always battle, right? Whether it's physically or metaphorically, figuratively. And Churchill says, to every man, there comes in his lifetime that special moment when he is figuratively tapped on the shoulder and offered the chance to do a very special thing, unique to him and fitted to his talents. What a tragedy if that moment finds him unprepared and unqualified for the work which would be his finest hour.
I'm immediately reminded of this lesson being very clearly taught in the Old Testament,
Yep.
in the book of Esther.
Yep.
Right? I mean, Esther is a Jewish girl. She's at this point in history, um, um, the Jews are dispersed. They do not occupy Israel. They're dispersed into foreign lands. The king of Persia um, gets upset at his wife, and he decides to pick another. And this Jewish girl is catches his eye amongst a group of others. She's singled out. She becomes the queen of Persia, and her uncle Mordecai, during a time in which some shenanigans has taken place to get the king to. If he says something, it's law and it never goes away. And so they trick him into saying, oh, by the way, you can kill all the Jews in the land, and so Mordecai, that's his advice to Esther, who has to have courage and and face the king, and she's not allowed to do this uninvited. And yet she's got his favor, so but she doesn't know that she could die or get punished or whatever for taking these actions. And she's encouraged with those words, what if God placed you here for such a time as this?
Right. And when Mordecai says this to Esther in this instance, she is like, "Well, I could die," but she responds with, "If I die, I die." And she responds in a very similar way that Churchill is talking here, that we all should, not in the sense of, if I die, I die, being reckless, but in the sense of like, what is the most valuable thing to us, right? What are those things? And we need to stand and fight for those things. And this idea of rising to the occasion, this idea of being prepared for what is to come. Like, we have no idea what's to come, right? We have no idea of these things. And so we need to be preparing now with our growth, with our development, so that when those times come, we are ready to take them on, grab the bull by the horns, right? And really rise to the occasion, because we never know when that test is going to be here.
100%, man. Uh, our time is up. It has been an amazing show. Thanks for introducing us to Winston Churchill, brother. And I hope that this has been a blessing to you, that you guys have gotten value out of this. As we jump into these affirmations, some of the things that we focused on today, just to quickly recap: leadership, vision, having what is it? An indelible spirit, courage, leadership. Hopefully, these are. You'll study Churchill and others, and be able to see the value of these character traits as you continue on in your own mindset journeys.
Never give up, never surrender. All right, let's jump into this. All right, because I am committed to my growth.
I am committed to my growth.
I am loved, appreciated, blessed, and highly favored.
I am loved, appreciated, blessed, and highly favored.
Challenges are opportunities for me to improve.
Challenges are opportunities for me to improve.
Oh, every day I am getting better and better.
Every day I am getting better and better.
I am my best investment.
I am my best investment.
Life happens for me. Everything is for my growth and benefit.
Life happens for me. Everything is for my growth and benefit.
I'm an action taker.
I am an action taker.
I am committed to being the most positive person that I know.
I am committed to being the most positive person that I know.
I am a fixer. I am somebody's answer. When you get me, you get everything that I'm connected to.
I am a fixer. I am somebody's answer. When you get me, you get everything that I'm connected to.
Justin, I am healthy, wealthy, and wise.
I am healthy, wealthy, and wise.
Let's go!
All right, you guys, have a crunchy, creamy, chewy Thursday, and we will see you guys here bright and early tomorrow, 7:30 a.m. Central Standard Time. Thank you so much for being here with us this morning. Again, it's our great hope that you've gotten some value out of this. If you have, please hit that like button. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, please subscribe. We have a new YouTube channel, and that is focused primarily on the gym. So if you're at the Growing Your Mindset YouTube channel, you're at the wrong one. Excuse me, if you're at the Grow Giver YouTube channel, you're at the wrong one. If you're at the Growing Your Mindset YouTube channel, you're at the right one. It's the one that's probably only has like 10 or some odd subscriptions at this point.
This logo.
Yeah. How many subscriptions do we have over there now?
9 or 10.
9 or 10. So, I mean, we're just getting that started. It's going to be a lot more intimate, but it's going to be a good place for us to get a fresh start with this show and focus in so that it's got that real clarity over there for what we're doing with growing your mindset. So other than that, we'll see you guys tomorrow. Oh, please share this with your friends if you believe they'll get value out of it. And that's all I've got to say. All right.